Hello, I'll be right with you, just getting the YouTube and the screen sharing organized. Hello, I'll be right with you, just getting the YouTube and the screen share.
I see you.
Yeah. What are you doing? Is Bubby bringing you from school? Mommy? Papi? Mommy? It's nice.
And I want to go to Nina's house.
Hello, Rabbi. Hello, Jeff.
Hello, guys.
Hi.
I'll be right with you. To Nina's house, you going to? Wow. Okay.
Hello,
Okay,
David.
there we go. Hello, David, Stephen, and Jeff. Welcome.
Hello, hi Rabbi. Shavua Tov.
And to you.
Thanks. My computer screen is not working for this. I'm going back now to my phone.
I see you.
Yep, I see you too.
David, try switching it on.
I've tried switching on and off, and I usually get it straight away. I go to Rambam login details, but it's not going in, not going there.
You guys, give me 1 minute. I'll be right back and we'll start.
I don't know what's happening there.
Have you
Can you
rebooted?
tell?
Have you unplugged the computer? Have you rebooted it?
No, not yet, because I just started now
Try
a
that.
couple of minutes ago. When I reboot, it'll probably come right.
Hello, Stephen. Hello, David. Hi, Jeff.
Hello, Ken.
Hello, Kent. Hello, Jeff.
Hi, David.
Mm.
It's hot today.
Okay, sorry for that. So do we have a quorum?
I think so.
We have a mezumin.
Not a minion, but a quorum.
Okay, gentlemen, I'm terribly sorry. I'm traveling a lot these days, so I'm going to be away the next few weeks again. Last time was a bar mitzvah. Now I have my first grandchild's wedding in Philadelphia next week, please God.
Mazel tov.
Mazel tov, mazel tov.
Next Monday, so I won't be here next week. And then I was invited to be a guest rabbi in a fancy hotel in Florida for Rosh Hashanah. So
Yeah.
they made me an offer in dollars, which I couldn't refuse. So. What's
I'm
it,
sure.
17, how much to the dollar today?
7.5.
No, somewhere around there.
32, somewhere, 1730.
1730, the sugar. Okay,
Right.
anyway, so I'm learning, I'm going tonight, but I'm happy to learn now, and then I will accept my apologies for the next few weeks. I'll be back before Yom Kippur, please God. So we can carry on after Yom Kippur. Well, actually, there's Yom Tov.
Oh, we'll have to.
Yom Tov is on Monday this year.
Well, wish you.
So Sukkot and Shmini Atzeres are both on Monday. Gee. Ain't gonna see you guys for a while, I'm afraid.
Oh, wish you Hag Sameach. No.
Thank you. I wish you all Shana Tova. Okay. Chapter 2 in the laws of Mechira, of buying and selling, and specifically today how we acquire. So I need to make a bit of an introduction and a little bit of a disclaimer. It sounds very primitive and degrading, actually, what we're going to read soon about acquiring slaves. So just a word of introduction to say that, once upon a time, slavery was a norm. And the Torah deals with realities. So that was one of the realities of the time. But we have many, many laws in the Torah that would guide us in terms of treating any human being respectfully and with dignity. And I would imagine that a slave owned by a Jew in the olden days had a much better and fairer treatment than if he was owned by anybody else. So that's just a disclaimer up front. But slaves were chattel; they were property. They were owned by people, unfortunately, in those days. So you bought slaves on the market in the same way as you bought animals. It's a sad reflection on ancient history, but that's the way it was. We have plenty of our own moral issues today with all our advancement and sophistication. So the beginning here, we'll talk about how to acquire a slave as property. So Eved Knaini, a Canaanite servant, which means a non-Jewish, okay, he doesn't use the word slave, he uses the word servant, which is a little bit more palatable. But he is like karka, it's like real estate. With regard to the laws of acquisition. So how do you acquire? So the way you acquire a human being is not the same as the way you acquire a toaster oven. So either there's transfer of money or a deed of sale or through chazokah. So how did you acquire land in Jewish law? Chazokah means that you either lived on the land or worked the land for 3 years. Like if a squatter is on property, it's a big issue now in South Africa, becoming a bigger issue. The EFF is pushing people to occupy land, I see. So if you're there for 3 years and nobody issues a single word of protest, that is halachically a proof that it's yours, because surely no owner of the land would allow squatters to come and invade his property and not say a word for 3 whole years. That's one type of chazaka. If you work the land, you improve the land, you renovate the house, that's a way of acquiring it halachically as well, in addition through paying money and a contract. So what manifestation of ownership is effective in acquiring the servant? So in the same way as you would work the land, so you put this person to work. And if they do work for you, that is a way of indicating that you are his employer or master. Okay. There are still people in South Africa who use the word master for their employers. I have to sometimes remind my gardener that he should call me rabbi, not master. So, what is implied? If the servant unties his new master's shoe, puts on his shoe, carries his articles to the bathhouse, undresses him, anoints him, combs his skin, dresses him, or lifts him up, the master acquires a servant. In other words, he's doing the work that a servant would do, a personal, a butler type of thing, for his master, and that's how he acquires him. Similarly, if he lifts up the servant, he acquires him. Now that's quite unusual, to lift up a human being. Normally with small chattel, with small little movable properties, you lift it up. But if he chose to do it, that's an acceptable way, halachically. 3, if he pushes the servant or brings him closer to him, he also acquires him. It's called meshicha. Meshicha is, we'll soon learn about when you buy a horse or a cow, you draw the cow. You can't pick up the horse or the cow, right? Unless you're Samson. So you draw it, you bring it, you cause it to move. Then you pull it on the reins type of thing. So if you do that to the servant, it's also acceptable. But if you just called him and said, Yankel or Ivan or whatever, Boris, come here, and he came to him, that's not good enough. If the servant's previous owner told him to go to the new purchaser and he followed those instructions, he still does not acquire him until he pushes him or makes use of him, it causes him to move or something. If the new owner manifests his ownership over the servant outside the presence of the previous owner must tell him, go manifest your ownership and acquire him, for the kinyan to be effective. You've come across the word kinyan, I'm sure, over the learning. Kinyan is a halachic acquisition. When the rabbi, before he signs the ksuba with the groom by a wedding, he does a kinyan with him. He takes a handkerchief and the groom picks up the handkerchief. That is one type of kinyan. It's an act of acquisition. 4, a servant below the age of majority is considered like an animal, meaning he's under bar mitzvah, and can be acquired through both the process by which an animal is acquired and those by which servants are acquired. So you can't pick up an adult necessarily so easily, but if you're a little kid, you could pick up and acquire him in that way. So he could be acquired by Mashiach, even if he didn't push him. Animals, 5, livestock, light or heavy, can be acquired through Mashiach. When lifting an animal is possible, it need not be lifted because it may receive a blow. You might hurt it when you drop it on the ground. It might break its leg or something. But you could lift it. But you could also cause it to move. You could pull the reins and bring him, make him move a bit. That's also acceptable. Lifting up an object is a kinyan only in a corner off the public domain or in a courtyard whose ownership the buyer and seller both share. It is not effective as a kinyan in the public domain or in a courtyard whose ownership is not shared by both the seller and the purchaser. So if you're in the public square, causing the animal to move doesn't mean anything. When it's in something that is owned by you or it's not such a public area, then you're sort of bringing it into your domain. But in the public domain, it's not your domain, so you're not bringing him into your domain. 6, how do you do Mashiach with an animal? So neither, of course, if the transaction is complete, it's a proper kinyan if the purchaser pulls the animal and it walks after him, or he rides it and causes it to walk, or he pulls it on the reins, as I said, with a leash. The transaction is effective even if he calls it and it comes. He doesn't move it with a leash. He just says, "Hey, Rover, come here." And the animal understands and he comes, or he swats it with a stick and causes it to run, like they do with horses. When the animal lifts both a forefoot and hind foot, that's the minimum definition of moving. And the acquisition is made. That applies provided the purchaser performs mashicha in the presence of the previous owner, as we said before. If it's not there, then the previous owner has to say, Lech mishoich uknei, go and perform mashicha and acquire this animal which I'm selling you. 7, when a person sells a herd, okay, you're buying one little sheep, okay, you could pick up the sheep. You're buying a cow or a horse, you could get on the horse and ride it. You could cause the cow. What are you buying a whole herd of sheep? You're gonna go pick up every single one? So we have a simpler way. Interesting word here. Mashkuchit. Have you ever heard of a mashkuchit? A mashkuchit is the sheep that leads the herd. Apparently, I don't know much about animals, but apparently herds have a head boy, and he leads them. So if you do it with a leader, then you get everybody along with him. That makes life a lot easier. So if he gives the mashkuchet, the leader of the herd, to the new purchaser as a gift or sells it, then all the others follow. He doesn't have to tell him, go perform mashiach and acquire them. Well, giving him this leading animal is tantamount to saying, go perform mashiach and acquire it. Thus, once the purchaser or the recipient performs mashiach with the herd, he acquires it, even if he performs mashiach outside his presence of the previous owner. And clearly, we're talking not about drawing every single animal personally, physically, but if you cause the head guy to move and everybody moves, follows him, then you've done mashiach on the whole herd. 8, when a person tells the purchaser or a recipient of a gift, perform mashiach of an animal, then you will acquire it, or perform chazaka of property, and then you will acquire it, he does not acquire it, even if he does the mashiach of the chazaka. Why? Because what did he say? Look at the words carefully. You will acquire it. He added the word will, which is future tense, meaning you're not acquiring it now. You will acquire it at some future time, which he has not specified. Instead, the seller or the giver of the gift has to say, go perform chazaka and acquire it. Not, and you will acquire it. You say, and acquire it, which means acquire it now by your action. 9. He says, perform mashiach with an animal and you will acquire it after 30 days. And he performs mashiach, he does not acquire it yet. He has to wait the 30 days. If he said acquire it now and after 30 days, which is a bit ambiguous, he acquires it now. He acquires it in 30 days. Even if it's standing in a swamp on the 30th day, and he obviously can't perform any mashiach with it at that time. Well, this resembles a situation in which an acquisition was made in the present, conditional on a stipulation, in which instance, when the stipulation is met, the transaction becomes effective. So I say, if you do mashiach now, it'll be yours in 30 days. So he makes a condition. If he meets the condition, then he gets it. Whenever a person uses the impression with the intent that, al-manas, it's as if he said the transaction should take place. Effective from right now. 10. Following rules apply when a person sells an animal to a purchaser or gives it a gift and tells the purchaser or recipient, acquire it in the manner in which people normally acquire it. So he doesn't specify how. He just says, do it how people would normally acquire it. So now we have to see, how do people normally acquire things? And where exactly are we talking about? So he says like this. If he performs Meshicha or Hagbo, he draws it or he lifts it, Hagbo, like Hagbo, when you raise the Torah, yeah? He acquires it. If, however, he rides upon it, now it's not so simple. Depends where and when he's riding this animal. Because there were places when it was not deemed appropriate for people to ride an animal. So he says like this, if this is done in the field, he acquires it. Because in a field, that's where you ride animals. You ride a horse in the field. Who rides horses in Johannesburg? Only the mounted police. You want to ride, you go to North Riding or somewhere in Aladreden, out of town. If it's done in the city, so he's buying a horse or a cow, and he rides it in the city, he does not acquire it, because what did he say? Acquire it in the manner in which people normally acquire it. People do not normally ride animals in town. For this reason, if the purchaser or recipient is an important person, don't forget in those days, horses were the mode of travel. So if the purchaser is a macher, he's a mover and shaker, he's a gentleman who is accustomed to riding in the city. The wealthy people would ride in the city. You know, they didn't go galloping like mad. They rode dignified, you know, like Queen Elizabeth with her coaches, you know. And so very wealthy people would promenade slowly on their animals as a sign of dignity. On the other extreme, very lowly people, coarse people, would ride in a normal manner in the city because they didn't have derech eretz, they didn't have the manners and the etiquette to know not to do that. But the average person would not ride in the city. So if he said, acquire this horse in the normal way of acquisition, and he rides it in the city, he will not acquire it because it's not common for people to ride in the city. However, if the purchaser or recipient is an important individual who is accustomed to riding in the city, or he is a very base person, a lowly person, who's not concerned about etiquette, and he also rides in the city. For example, a person who raises animals or servants, he's like a barn boy or whatever. He's not a big gentleman. Or a woman. A woman is also different in this case. Why? Because a woman is not as physically strong as a man, and if she wants to acquire a horse, it's not easy for her to pull the reins and cause the horse to walk after her. The horse may resist, and she hasn't got the koach. However, if she's a good horse rider and she mounts the horse, she can easily control the horse while mounted and cause him to run, trot, gallop, whatever. So for a woman, we would allow her to acquire the horse by riding it because that's easier for her than Meshicha. Or if the animal is in the public domain where many walk, it can be acquired by riding, provided the rider causes the animal to proceed. So he has to cause it to walk. Quick quiz. How is a Canaanite slave acquired? Kesef, shtar, chazaka, all of the above, none of the above.
All of the above.
Thank you. Which of the following methods of acquisition do not work for an animal?
Monetary payment.
Thank you. Is riding an animal valid?
Yes.
3 out of 4. Let's see if we can get a perfect score. If someone says perform Mashiach with an animal and you will acquire it now and after 30 days, the law is
Requires it after 30 days.
Number 2. Yeah.
well done. 100%, guys. Proud of you. Nachas.
Thanks, Rabbi.
I wish you Shana Tova, a happy and
Shana
healthy
Tova,
New Year.
Rabbi.
And I look forward to seeing you towards the end of the active season.
You see it, Rabbi?
Thank you, thank you, thank
And
you.
to you and family, please.
And
Thank you very
Mazal
much.
Tov as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.